Are you ready for this? Paul Gilbert's in the house. Paul, it's great to have you back. Welcome back to your old stomping grounds, your alma mater.
I love MI. I really, I wish I had time to come here more often.
Yeah.
And when I first started teaching here, I taught for about 2.5 years, and then I had a really good problem, which was Mr. Big started doing so well that we started traveling a lot. And it's been like that ever since. It's a passport to the world. But I loved getting up every morning, and you know, before my eyes had opened, I had a guitar in my hand, and I was jamming with everybody. So enjoy it while you're here. It's such an amazing time.
Could you let's start right there, where you were 17 years old when you came here, right?
I was.
Can you tell us a little bit about your MI experience?
Well, when the first thing I think of is this was 1984, and man, in 1984, everybody had the most amazing giant hair, and you know, this is going back a few years before that. You know, Def Leppard had come out; they had some really good hair, and so I had really straight hair, so I got a perm. And man, my first perm was really rocking. It was just perfect. I looked just like Pete Willis.
Was it homemade?
And well, with what?
Was it homemade?
It wasn't. No, I went to a salon. You know.
Okay.
But after the perm grew out, then I had to get another one and another one. After like the third perm, it wasn't good anymore. So by the time I got to MI, I had the worst haircut. It was just like, you know, old cut off perm. It just wasn't working at all. And I remember walking into Guitar Center, and the guy behind the counter, you know, the salesman, just had like the lion mane, you know, blonde locks. I think it might have actually been Dave Marshall, who went on to play with Vince Neil and maybe some other people. But I remember walking in and just going like, how can I compete with that? You know, I'm screwed, you know. And so, but it sort of worked out for me because, you know, because my hair was so bad, I had no distractions. No girls were interested in me. And I just, you know, had my nose to the grindstone for that whole year. You know, my hair was growing a little bit, and I was practicing the scales, and you know, I could really concentrate on the art. So, so those bad perms actually worked in my favor in the long run.
It's a good career choice.
Yeah.
Get a perm. That's a good advice. Get a perm. That ensures.
And then get too many, but then you have to, you know, make the great comeback, because eventually Mr. Big obviously is in the hairband category. And that took so much effort to, you know, grow it. And then right when we got big, it became out of fashion. And it's like, but I worked on this. You know.
Finally nailed it, and then it's gone.
Yeah, then it's gone. Oh well. But the E chord still works.
So, Paul, tell us a little bit. What's new in your world?
What's new in my world? Oh my goodness. Well, music is always new because there's always new things to discover. And a few years ago, I got kind of angry at myself because I realized there was something that, on the face of it, was very simple, and I was really bad at it, and that's why I was angry. And the simple thing was playing a blues progression, you know, playing a solo, and just doing 1 or 2 notes that were the good ones. You know, basically hitting the chord tones, or, you know, making each part connect to the next part. And every time I would try it, I knew the right scales, and I knew, but when I tried to play it, it didn't sound right. It'd go like, oh, not that one. That's not what I meant. And I realized, you know, that phrase I just said, that's not what I meant. That's kind of important, because first of all, I have to know what I mean. You know, I have to have the music has to be in my ears, has to be coming from me, and not just patterns that I know visually. And, you know, because I work so hard to do those scales, and I go, well, I could use that as a survival tactic. And, you know, I made a career out of going whittly whittly. And so it's a kind of a crowd pleaser if you get the right audience. But I wanted to go beyond that and, you know, just play something simple. And I couldn't believe how difficult it was for me to play something simple. And, you know, I was just stomping around and going, why can't I do this? So I was like, okay, I got to start working on this. You know, so it'd be like, you know, just the basic stuff. And I could, you know, get a couple of them. But I really wanted to get it where it's indestructible, right? Just, you know, I don't even think about it. It just comes out. And that led me down this whole other transforming, musical, life-changing path that has been so rewarding. Because I got really excited about scales because I could do them. You know, and anything you're successful at is exciting. And so, you know, when I came to GIT and I learned all these scales, like, oh, this is great, I can do this. And I can do it pretty well, and people clap, and Yngwie's doing it, and I can be like him, you know. And so I had some success doing that, but also I'm a music fan. And after about 3 years of really being into the, you know, I just started getting tired of listening to myself. And so I found other things. You know, I got into pop music. You know, I was in Mr. Big at this time, so I started writing songs like Green Tin and 60s Mind, which were very influenced by the chords I was learning by listening to the Beach Boys, Todd Rundgren, the Beatles, 70s pop, 60s pop. And so I was getting much more into songwriting. And not really into guitar playing so much. Just, you know, I knew some chords, but it wasn't really expanding what I was doing as a guitarist. It was just expanding as a songwriter. And then you know, the ADAT came out. That was exciting. It was like the first time you could afford to have a pro studio in your house. So I got some ADATs. I started doing solo albums. You know, I could be a singer because I could do 1 million overdubs when you know, after the engineer left. And, you know, so then I got into engineering and producing. And then I got into trying to learn Japanese. And that was, I learned what it's like to not be good at something. And there's lots of things I'm not good at, but most things that I'm not good at, I give up right away. You know, if I try some sport, you know, I remember in high school, you know, okay, I'm not going to be a football player. You know, I'm not even, you know, I know that really quickly. But Japanese, I thought, maybe I can do this. So I put like 4 or 5 years into studying and practicing. And of course I got better, but the rate of betterness was so slow that finally I thought, you know, if I put all this time into being a guitar player, I might be able to do something. And so that was around the time where we're getting back to the beginning of my story, where I found this, for me, what a new path of basically trying to find what's in my head and getting it out on the instrument. And that was my original goal as an 8-year-old kid before I ever played guitar was, you know, I used to have riffs in my head. I'd be an 8-year-old kid walking around, you know, and somehow I wanted to get that on the instrument, and I forgot. I forgot that that was my goal because, you know, I got sidetracked with, you know, and I'm happy I can do that, and that's a sound in my head too. So if that comes up, I'll whip that thing out. But it's so rewarding, and it's such an endless buffet of musical goodness to have that goal of like, well, what's in my head? Is there anything? You know, is there a melody in there? And then you find it on your instrument. And you may not be able to do it right away, but you can hone that ability.
Did you feel that getting into songwriting? And I remember growing up in the 80s, reading your column in Guitar Player magazine. And I remember there was a shift where all of a sudden you started really getting into songwriting. I think this was about the time when Mr. Big was coming around with, you guys started your first record. How did that impact your playing? I mean, from that point on, once you started focusing on, you started analyzing chord progressions and songs by people you knew, and you became a really good songwriter yourself. And I think I could sense a change in your playing. I mean, you always had a very melodic angle to your playing, but it seemed like it got even more melodic. Like it seemed like it had even more layers. Of
well, you want to play what fits the tune, but as a really young kid growing up, I was into pop bands. My favorite band was the Beatles, the Osmond Brothers. You know, although they were actually heavier than the Beatles. You know, later on, I got into Led Zeppelin and Van Halen and guitar music. But initially, I wanted to be a singer. You know, Elton John was my hero.
Really?
And man, you know, I'm still, you know, on YouTube. I'll pull up like, you know, Someone Saved My Life Tonight, and just go like, oh, you know, he's just singing so great, and that song is so great, and the chords are so cool. And really coming to MI and learning the thing that was like the spark of it all was the harmonized major scale. Mm-hmm. You know, C major 7th, D minor 7th, on and on. We learned that in theory class, you know, within the first month, I think we were working on that. And that blew my mind, because as a guitar player, the guitar music I was listening to was much more harmonically simple. You know, there weren't a lot of 7th chords happening. You know, I was listening to the Ramones. You know, there's a lot of root fifth, power chords. And of course, listen to Van Halen, but even that would, if Eddie would play something more complex, it would be like arpeggiated, like Ain't Talking About Love. But even that's just a minor chord. Sure. And by saying just a minor chord, I don't mean to demean that, because it's an awesome minor chord, and that's exactly what that song calls for. But from really having already the Beatles and 70s pop in my ears, when I started to learn these chords, I started to attach that and go, hey, that's that chord in The Things We Do for Love by 10cc, and that's the chord that I heard in all those, Strawberry Fields. And I started to really enjoy that, because that was just, the music I grew up with. Those were the songs in my head already. So I could do exactly what I was talking about. I could connect my fingers to the sounds in my head.
That's something that's very interesting that I really always want to ask you about, and that is that as musicians, guitar players, we always work on vocabulary, right? Vocabulary is a big part of laying a foundation for becoming a musician. But as a songwriter, you need to work on vocabulary as well, right? You need to figure out chord progressions, typical ways of solving. If you're at a 5 chord, where do you go? Do you go back to 1? Do you go to the 6th chord? Do you go to the 4th chord?
And I imagine it's really style specific.
Yeah. And what was your process like in discovering how you like to write music? And I mean, you have your guitar here. It would be awesome to hear Paul demonstrate some of his principles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But do I have a pick? I do. I'm not going to go to full blast for now.
Okay.
No matter what you... Now, I wish I could sing high like Badfinger does. But, for example, one of the things that blew my mind, like I've got all these, in my own musical discoveries, certain moments that I'll always remember of going like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Now, when I first learned the harmonized major scale, it was so mathematically appealing. Because everything isn't the same key signature. And, my first thought was, well, that explains everything. Every song is going to fit inside there. And, and I found songs that did. If you learn like, was it, here, wasting each day of the year, 1 chord, 2 chord, 3 chord, 4 chord, and then you may have modulation, wave of a hand, but it's still a 2, a 5, and then a 1. Or that's actually another 2, 5 in a different key, 2, 5, and then a 2 and a 5, and so I got comfortable with that numbering system.
Is that something you consciously picked out of songs when you would look at a song like that? Would you consciously look at, oh, it's actually going from?
Well, we were doing that at school. They would assign us tunes, sure. And you had to circle like these 3 chords are in this key. And then you'd find, okay, these 3 chords are in this key, and that was exercises we'd do. Mm-hmm. So after doing that enough to become, somewhat fluent with it, I just started going through the Beatles tunes and going like, that's how that works. Nice. Now, the first Beatles song that really stumped me was, how's it go? Sorry. If you don't take her out tonight, she's gonna change her mind. And I will take her out tonight and gonna treat her kind. You're gonna lose that girl. You're gonna lose that girl. I listened to that song a million times when I was a kid. And it's, it's in E. And the second chord, if the science is right, should be a G sharp minor. That's the 3 chord. But it's not. It's a dominant.
The secondary dominant.
And so I was like, well, that doesn't work, And so that's the thing. I started to, get into beyond the exceptions to the rules. And it got to the point now where I'm still familiar with the musical terminology that I learned when I was here. But what ends up happening in or at least in my brain, is I start to, because there's nobody I work with uses. I mean, if I go to a Mr. Big rehearsal, I'm not going to say, it's Mixolydian. Not everybody speaks that language. I mean, you guys will because you're here, but that in rock and roll, there's a lot of great players that never use that terminology. But they know it intuitively. Yeah. And they might know it. And Mr. Big, the things everybody does know is song references. Yeah. If I want to get Mixolydian across, I'll say, "Lickin' Strawberry Fields," you know. You know, that thing, then everybody knows what I mean. Or, you know, "Within You, Without You," you know. You know, so that's how we communicate there. And what ends up happening is, you know, you start to know the shapes, and you know, the terminology isn't necessarily important because it depends on who you're communicating with. But and so that'll happen. Like there's a song we're going to play later today. I have no idea what the chord is that I'm playing. I did when I figured out the solo, but I forgot already because it's kind of unfamiliar. This is the chord. I mean, we'll play more when we get to it. But it's like B flat in the bass, and then it's got. And I could figure it out, but I'm not interested enough to because I already know how to play it.
Yeah.
So it's you know, I don't have time for that.
Sure, it's a practical aspect to everything,
Yeah.
right?
I probably should because I'm, you know, hired to teach things, but I just haven't gotten around to it yet. But yeah, I just love chords because that was the style of music that I grew up listening to, 60s and 70s pop. Sure. There's a lot of great chords. I mean, the other day I was figuring out, let me turn this buzz box off. This is going to be a real challenge for my falsetto because it's Dionne Warwick. How's the song go? Oh, it's so the chords are if you see me walking down the street and I'll start to cry each time we meet. Walk on by, walk on by, then make me high. And then this chord. Walk on by. Now, I'm already getting emotional because this chord, that almost makes me cry. That chord is so emotional. And I've never played that in my life. And they don't, that's a big blocky campfire version of that song. And in their actual arrangement, you know, it's going like, it's moving more. Mm-hmm. But I'll just show you what that is. He's just playing a F sharp major 7th, which is the first chord I learned when I came to MI, and I thought, I'll never use a major 7th, you know. And then all it really does is changes the bass note to B flat. But that's an odd move. And really the top of that chord, that's just an A minor triad, like a Stairway to Heaven. So the first one changes the bass to F, and then B flat. Walk on by. Damn, that Burt Bacharach. Burt Bacharach wrote that, and you know,
genius.
It's funny because you know, emotionally, I still feel pretty much like the 17-year-old kid that went to school here in 1984. But you know, I'm not 17 anymore. I'm kind of old, so I'm 48. So I know that you guys being young, you're probably like, Burt Bacharach.
Who's that?
That's the old stuff, you know. You know, he's just a great writer that wrote a lot of stuff with major 7th chords and really interesting timing stuff as well. A lot of times he'd add a beat at the end of a phrase. You know, the stories about Burt Bacharach is the musicians that played his music would always be frustrated and angry because his stuff was rough to play. Mm-hmm. It was almost like prog pop because there'd always be like one little extra beat, and they'd be going like, you know, why? But you know, when you hear the song, it's like, oh, it's got to be there.
It has to be there.
Yeah. So this is for me kind of a challenge as an artist, is that the music that I grew up with and I really love is not at all what I'm known for, or what people expect. You know, I mean, if I play in front of an audience, people want to hear like scarified, technical difficulties, you know, super loud, chunky guitar going chicka 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 chicka, and you know, the chord stuff that comes from the 70s pop informs that. You know, I'll throw in a trickier chord than I might otherwise once in a while, but you know, that's what I got to deal with. Is, you know, I sort of have two hearts. You know, because I love the heavy stuff too.
That's right. Well, good music is good music regardless, right? When it's written or what it's played on or what style it is. Can you tell us a little bit about the writing process for you? You've released like 13 solo albums. You've done how many albums with Razor X? You've done 5 albums, 6 albums with Mr. Big. What is the starting point for you? You know, you guys have read the interviews with great musicians or great writers. It seems like everyone has like their own way of approaching writing a song. Yeah. Like I've read interviews with people that start out with the rhythm. There may be a rhythmic setup that triggers, you know, starts the songwriting process. It may be a chord, it may be a chord progression, maybe a melody. And how do you approach writing your music?
Well, it's if I'm not careful, I can really dread the process and really hate songwriting. So one of the best pieces of advice I got was from Neil Morse. Neil Morse is like a prog. He used to be in a band called Spock's Beard. He does a lot of work with Mike Portnoy, and he's a solo guy, and he does a lot of other, like Transatlantic, I think is a band he's in. I did a Beatles tribute with Neil. And Neil is very prolific as well. He just writes these amazing, complex prog records, and you know, he loves the pop stuff like I do. And I was working on a record, and I happened to be trading some emails with Neil, and I was in a dark place. You know, I wasn't enjoying the process at all. And I said, Neil, you know, how do you do it? And you know, I'm having such a rough time. I just don't like this. And he said, and he was surprised. He was like, what do you mean? The writing's my favorite part. You know, you don't have to worry about playing anything perfectly. If you make a mistake, it doesn't matter. You know, you just do it, and you're in complete control. You're like the captain of the ship. You know, the music is yours. You can make whatever you think of. And he was so optimistic about it, and obviously enjoying himself so much, that the thing I took from that is I have to force myself to have a good time. And that's not always easy, because it's when your job is to be a musician, you start to think about it. This is a job. I have to show up, and I have to work, to put in the time, and I have to, you know, struggle. And the roughest thing is you have to have a good time. And sometimes it's almost like a guilty thing. Like, you know, well, if I'm having a good time, then it's not really work anymore. But that's where the good stuff comes from. And that's why all the, you know, all the crazy, you know, that's why Nicky Sixx, even though I'm just thinking of him because he's got a poster backstage. You know, that's why, like, you know, freaked out, insane, druggy people still write great songs. You know, I'm having a good time. You know, and now I'm a clean living kind of a guy. You know, once in a while eat two Hershey bars. That's my overdose. But I have to somehow find a way to enjoy it, and I'm pretty convinced that if you're not enjoying it, the product is just not going to be good. And I'm self-aware enough to know, you know, I can install a little mental meter, you know, having a good time, not having a good time. So as I'm doing it, I can tell where I am. And absolutely, whenever I start like getting, when I'm having a good time, that's when the good stuff happening. Now, which comes first? Who knows? It's sort of chicken and the egg. But back to like the practical part of it, I think the seed of a song, because I'm actually writing a lot this week. I've got a couple. The session come up in a couple of weeks. I've got to have a couple songs ready. And the seed of the song, I think it's the spark that starts it, kind of has to just come intuitively. It has to come from something you hum. I mean, a lot of times, I've heard a lot of great writers who are guitar players, they don't even have the guitar on. You know, you're just sort of humming. I've got my little iPhone with a voice recorder, and I'll go, you know, whatever the riff is, I'll hum it. And then you get the guitar, and you work it out, and you start, you know, sort of shaping the clay. But the initial idea, a lot of times, is just something that you don't want to be analytical about. You just want to kind of pour your ideas out on the table. You organize them later, because the organizing part's much more thinking and planning and much more cerebral. And for me, and I think most songwriters in my genre, you don't start cerebral. You start with something that you're inspired about, and it can be really small. You know, like the chord, you know, I find this, you know, I was like, man, I got to write a song around that. You do my own version of it. Yeah. And just to give you I'm trying to give you an example of a song before. I mean, well, actually, this is funny, because sometimes I'll write a song and I'll think, like, where did this come from? I know I stole it from somewhere. And the melody of the Mr. Big song that I wrote called Green to the 60s Mind, you'll be looking groovy in a 60s mood, maybe tell the person die, little legend, baby, try your very best to hide. I thought, I knew I got that from somewhere. And it took me about 20 years to figure out where I stole that.
Oh, really?
And it's Frere Jacques.
That's funny.
It was just driving me nuts. Like, I know I got it from somewhere. But, so that's, you know, it has to come from somewhere. Yeah. It's all, or it's got to be combinations of things that you heard somewhere. Sure. And just so you know, I mean, like the chord at the end of that song, the big payoff chord, that's a minor 7 flat 5 chord, which I wouldn't have known if I hadn't come to MI. Sure. And but the thing is, as soon as I learned it, I attached it to songs. I immediately found that's the same chord as, was it, My Girl Does It Good? Whoa, whoa, whoa. This is My Love by Paul McCartney. Or, I may not always love you, but long as there are stars above you, you never need to doubt it. I'll make you so sure about it. God only knows what I'd be without you. Beach Boys, God only knows. And it's even, there's some Yngwie song that the keyboard player plays that in the solo. So that's a good chord. And actually, the thing I figured out later, it's actually not, compositionally, it's not a minor 7 flat 5 chord. It's a substitute for the dominant chord below it. So, you know, you figure this stuff out as time goes on, but that's, you know, thank you, MI. Thank you, this building, for, you know, teaching me this chord. That's an awesome chord.
That's right. Well, it just shows that it's very important to have some grasp of theory, and it can really help you in the process of understanding what's going on. And it can help you as creating your artistic vision, because now you can translate what you got in your head into your instrument.
Well, again, I had the only exception, I'd say, is if your goal is to be the Ramones. And then you don't need a minor 7 flat 5 chord to play any Ramones song ever written. But then you need to have a ferocious downstroke and a singer that has, you know, a certain kind of tone, and you've got to be able to write awesome lyrics. And you know, so every band has its own strong point. And, you know, you just follow what you love. I mean, I love those chords. So to me, I can't help it, because that's the stuff I love. And I drive, the bands that I'm in, I drive the guys crazy. In Mr. Big writing sessions, I know those guys, I probably have them pulling their hair out, because every time we write a song, it's like, wait, let me do some more chord searching. You know, because if it doesn't have one, you know, at least one of my crazy chords, I'm always like, wait, I can find one, give me 5 minutes. You know, and the guys are like, come on, this is good enough, you know. So it sort of depends on the situation. You know, that chord, if I was playing a Ramones tribute band, I don't need it. But if I'm playing, you know, Beach Boys, Paul McCartney, or you know, anything with a little 70s pop flavor, that's a great one.
Excellent. So let's change gears a little bit. We're in a room here with the next generation of musicians, right? We're looking out on what will be 5 years from now will be the professionals in the music industry. What advice would you give to these young and talented people about to start their career? And I'm curious, just in terms of what advice would you give them in terms of finding their identity and carving out a path for themselves? Because, I mean, you came here, you were 17 years old, you were obviously extremely accomplished already. But you've been on a journey that's been very personal to you. And what advice can you give these young talents for how to find their path?
Oh my goodness. We're in a good city. You know, I came from a small town where there were some good musicians. I think there's good musicians everywhere. But because of the local culture or whatever, people didn't take it seriously. They just thought, well, I'll you know, have fun playing, but I'm not really going to do it for my job. And because of that, I could not get people to show up. And you know, I really wanted to rehearse all the time. You know, I was always calling up drummers, you know, come on, let's get together on Wednesday. You know, okay, and then, oh, dude, I can't make it. You know, and you know, I'll temper the advice I gave a little bit earlier, where you've got to have a good time, but you've got to have a good time a lot. You've got to show up to have the good time. You know, you got to have a good time at music, not. You know, it really is you know, it's a fun job, but it's not a job that doesn't require effort. You know, you have a great time doing your effort, but you have got to put an enormous amount in. And you don't have to be a virtuoso. And you know, that's really what I wanted to be when I first came here, because that was, you know, at that time there were some really exciting guitar virtuosos out. You know, Yngwie had come out, Van Halen had been out for a few years, so that stuff was really, everybody was excited about it at the time. You know, that's gone through its ups and downs. So whether you're into that or whether you're into songwriting or, you know, there's a million styles of music, whatever it is, you really, I would say, need to become a style expert in what you love. And you know, you have to find out the ingredients that makes that work. And you can combine that. I mean, obviously, like I said, I love Dio and Van Halen and Judas Priest, but I also love Neil Sedaka. Mm-hmm. And you know, who knows if that's, you know, if that's just too vinegar and oil to fit together. But you know, those are the things I love, so I can't help it. And maybe that's the trick: is to do the stuff that you just can't help because you love it so much. And then, you know, during whatever the struggling years are, you know, if you don't get a record deal right away, you're still going like, you know, it'd be nice to live in a better apartment, but man, this tune is cool. And so if that's the case, I think you always do well. And, you know, you've got to be one of the great joys of music is working with other people. And as, I think maybe guitar players in particular, we're individualists. Sometimes we don't like to work with other people. We like to sit in our room and play our guitar and don't come near me. And you have to do a certain amount of that to develop your craft. But at the same time, you know, sometimes you just got to push yourself to work with other people and stretch and get out of your comfort zone. And I will always be incredibly thankful to John Alderetti, who was the bass player of Racer X. He was a student at the same time I was. And he was much more of a go-getter than I was. You know, I was happy to sit in my room and like, we're not ready. We need to rehearse 10,000 more hours. And John came back one day and he was like, I booked a gig. I'm tired of waiting around. I'm like, really? And you know, we're not ready. He's like, I don't care. We're ready enough. And so he booked us a gig. It was Racer X back in you know, 85 or something. And we did the gig and it was fine. You know, it wasn't perfect, but it was good enough. And the next gig was better. And without that, I might have just, you know, procrastinated forever. And I've seen musicians who are amazing, and they really, I mean, one of the guys that comes to mind is Sean Lane. Sean Lane is a guy who's, you know, has some amazing work out there, but I think a lot of his best stuff was never recorded, will never be heard, because he was one of those guys that was like, well, I don't think it's quite ready yet. And you know, I wish that he had my John Alderetti to go like, I don't care, I booked a gig. You know, I don't care, we got this recording date coming up. And so you either need to find somebody who will do that to you, whether it's a band member, a manager, whatever, or do that yourself. To just, you know, whether you're ready or not, jump in the ocean and start swimming. And that was the biggest surprise to me too, when I really kind of got pro. You know, when I joined Mr. Big, we started touring and doing albums. Was, man, the preparation time that I was used to, you know, in the old days of being in a teenage rock band, you know, rehearsing for a year before you do a gig, that's gone. You know, it's like you got a tour coming up, oh, rehearse for 3 days. You know, when I first heard that, I was like, you got to be kidding me, 3 days, you know, that's not enough time to tune my guitar. You know, and that's the way it's been ever since. It's just, it's almost manic, which is great because you're doing it.
So you would say setting yourself up for deadlines is probably one of the things that will push your career forward the fastest.
Well, that's what happens. You know, when you get in a big band or start doing that. And I love deadlines because it means that somebody wants me. Yeah. When the record company says like, you know, here's the deadline for next album, it's like, they still like me. You know, with no deadline, it's like, well, you know, what's on HBO?
The deadlines, I find, is a fascinating thing, and for those of you that have been in bands or been in situations where you have to rise to the occasion, it does magic, won't you say? I mean, you can do things that you thought were impossible, but when you get a deadline and you actually got to deliver and you're held accountable, it's incredible what you actually can accomplish.
That's the thing I should add with songwriting.
Yeah,
is
exactly.
It's gotten to the point where if I've got 3 months to prepare for an album, I won't really even try writing until 2 weeks before.
Exactly.
I mean, I'll come with little ideas, but I don't beat myself up like, you know, I've got 3 months, so I should be writing the whole time, because I've learned I'll just be beating myself up. So I'll have fun. I'll be like, oh, I'm working on this, you know, new lick. This is fun. I like this. You know, working on all the stuff that just keeps me excited about music, and then the deadline starts to loom in. It's like, okay, and then I am so surprised when I start writing. It's like, wow, I just wrote 2 songs today. It completely surprises me. Yeah. And thank goodness it's, you know, because I always think like, well, the wells run dry. No more song. That's all I've got, and out they come. And really, the only other thing is this is just for me. I don't know if it's for everybody. I'm not particularly good at fiction. You know, I can't write a story out of nothing. It has to be based on something in my life, and which is rough because my life isn't that dramatic. And a lot of the writers that I really admire have had dramatic and often horrible stuff happen to them, and out of it comes an amazing song. I mean, I heard an interview with, I think, I may be saying this wrong, but it was with Paul McCartney, and he was saying, he said, I never realized until recently that Yesterday is about the fact that my mom died when I was 12 or something. And, you know, that's not worth any song. That's a great song, but that's, you know, you don't want to make that stuff happen, but, you know, maybe that's the shiny part of that is if something lousy happens to you. It's like, hey, I can get a whole album out of this. Yeah. And of course, good stuff too. There's happy songs as well.
Yeah. I have a couple of last things I wanted to ask you about. We all know that the music industry has changed tremendously the last 10 years. How have you dealt with the shift over to the digital online world, and what advice could you give us here for how to embrace it and utilize it to its fullest?
Well, my sister showed me how to use Photoshop.
Okay.
So I learned how to take, you know, like somebody's head and put it on another person's body. And initially I just had fun, you know, I'd take like, you know, I'd put my head and put it on like the astronauts or something, you know. But later on, that's really good for promo photos. You know, you get some awesome photo, your guitar is just the right pose, and then, but it's like your rock face isn't right, your tongue's sticking out or something, so you cut out your head from another shot, you put that on the first shot. And I did that for when I got on the G3 tour with Joe Satriani, and they had a photographer come to one of the shows, and they're like, is this shot all right? And I was like, no, you know, and so I quickly put on a new head, and said, how's this one? Like, that's great. You know, so that's useful. And really, I mean, I remember in the old days, like with Mr. Big, we'd have a new album coming out, and so the record company, and we were on Atlantic Records, a big record label, they would, you know, they'd get ready for the promotion. So they would hire a publicist or someone to interview us, and the purpose was, okay, we'll interview the band, and we'll write a bio, and somehow the bio is going to help sell the record. And I remember always, like, we didn't really take it seriously. Like, I mean, maybe Billy did, because he always knows what's going on, but I didn't. So I remember reading the bio and going like, this isn't going to sell any record. This is just not interesting. But I don't know if we were trying to be interesting. We're just answering the questions. You know, well, what's the new album about? Oh, I don't know. You know. So you know, as time goes on, and with the, you know, the way the business is now, I end up writing my own bio. And because I'm writing it, I make sure it's good.
Sure. So
it's a pain in the ass because I got to, you know, put my guitar down for 10 minutes while I pen the thing, but you know, that's sort of the up and down of it, is that you end up spending more time being your own record company in a lot of situations, but you can finally do it right. Because a lot of times the record companies, even the big ones, you know, they didn't really put the loving care that you would put, you know, when you have the product in your own hands.
Yeah. I just want to I want to ask you something else. We're going to go back a little bit. It's something I really always wanted to ask you that I have here on my list, and that is, as a musician, and if you read biography of all great musicians, there are always these epiphanies throughout their life, and these moments where like they saw the light or something changed, right? Yeah. Because your development isn't linear. right? It's always going in stages. So could you share with us some of the things that really meant a lot for you in your, as you were, you know, throughout your career, that has really shaped who you are today?
Yeah. Well, initially downstrokes.
There you go.
Well, the first 2 years that I played guitar, I was self-taught, and so I only played upstrokes. I don't know why, but you know, just for the first 2 years, I was just like. You know, everything was an upstroke, and I only used one string, the low E string, because I didn't know how to tune yet. That solved that problem. Just play one string. And I only used one finger, my middle finger, because it was the biggest. And played that for, I learned Led Zeppelin song, you know. Just everything I could. And so finally I started to take some lessons, and the guy said, he looked at me like, oh no, and he's like, well, you can do downstrokes. And I'm like, oh my God, you know. And I remember hearing Barracuda, the song by Heart, that has a gallop, like, you know. And suddenly that became possible, because before I'm going like all ups. It's just like, I would hear that on the radio, just going, how do they do that? It's so fast! You know? So that was learning that, having the hand on the bridge, because I had an uncle, I still have an uncle who's a fantastic guitar player, but he lived pretty far away, so he'd only visit once in a while. But he heard me playing, and he said, just put your hand on the bridge, and all of a sudden I could mute, and that sounded, you know, chunky and tough. And a chord, because I didn't know chords, and finally I learned to read the chord diagram and know that you're not supposed to play all the strings. Because I remember before my first guitar lesson, you know, I thought, I got to impress this guy. I've been playing for 2 years. So I had a Beatles book, and I looked, and I kind of figured out the chord diagram, and it was a D chord. But I didn't know that you're not supposed to play all the strings, so I was like, I don't know, but that's what it says, you know. So I went in, and the guy said, you don't play these bottom ones. That's what the little X's mean, you know. So those were, but after that, almost instantly, after, you know, 2 years of doing that, suddenly I could play like whole songs and sound like the record. You know, I was doing, the first song I think I played was Rocky Raccoon. One day this woman ran off with another guy, hit young Rocky in the eye. And that was, I was so happy, like that sounds like the record. More recently, it was the B.B. King First Finger Bend. Mm-hmm. Because I'd always, you know, B.B. King visually, just the fact that his left hand can go like, you know, it's shaking like I don't know how he does that. And I thought, I gotta at least try. I never really tried to do. I mean, I can do the downward one, like on the G string, but he does it on the high E, and I can kind of get the sound now, but I still can't get the fingers flying around. And so, you know, I was watching a video. It was called. It's on YouTube. It's a really great video. The song's called Sweet 16 in C sharp. He's going. When I first met you, babe, Lord, you were just sweet 16. And it's all in C sharp, which is kind of a nice place to play because it's an easier, there's not as much tension on the string. So all these bends that he does with his first finger, like that first finger bend, was so painful. And this is, you know, 3 years ago or something, you know. So I was somewhat established as a guitar player, but I didn't have a callus and on that part of my finger, because it really uses a different part. So that was like virgin, soft skin, you know, it had never been touched. And I'm going like, oh, you know, ow, you know. But I thought, I just, as a scientific experiment, you know, I want to see how long it takes me to grow a new callus where there had never been one. It took 6 weeks. And it wasn't like pain and agony and then 6 weeks it suddenly works. You know, gradually it got better every day. And, but you can't, you know, it's not something you can rush because you don't want blood. You know, you have to just do it a little bit, and then, okay, stop, wait, recover, you know. Okay, you know, okay, you know, just, and it takes so much maintenance. I mean, I've really got to do that all the time. you know, the guys that are on the road, you know, B.B. King was playing, you know, 300 nights a year, you know, all the Joe Bonamasas of the world now, you know, they're on the road all the time. So they can maintain that callus. And that's what I realized is like the most important piece of gear that I can ever have as a guitar player are my calluses. Just because the style that I love so much is bending. And without the callus, it's just, I won't go for bends because it's too painful. So it was funny, on the last, I was doing a clinic tour recently. And the week before the clinic tour, I went to visit my family in Japan. My wife's Japanese, so we went over to see her parents. And so I spent like a week not playing guitar. And the whole time I'm like, don't go away, don't go away. And then I have to jump into this Italian clinic tour, and I'm bending like crazy. And about 3 days in, I'm like, my calluses are gone. This is just really starting to hurt. So I took a set of 9s, threw away the low E string, and put the A string on the 6th string. And then, so it's like a 32 for the low E. You know, I had it all the way down, and then I just put an 8 on top. And it's just, you know, it was so easy. It was really fun. Of course, you know, every time you play a chord, it's kind of, you know. But bending was just like, you know, it was so easy, and I was having the best time. And then, you know, the next day I think I took a set of 10s and did the same trick. But, you know, I know, like, I've researched Billy Gibbons lately, and he uses a 7 on top.
That's right.
And I guess he was inspired by, you know, he met B.B. King once, and B.B. picked up one of Billy's guitars and said, like, Billy, you know, why are you working so hard? You know, just these strings, you know, you don't have to work so hard, you know, put some lighter ones on. So, you know, depending on the style of music, too. I mean, if you're, you know, doing pounding power chords and not doing a lot of bending, then the thicker ones are going to be better. But then, and again, it's rock and roll, there's no rules. But I know for me, on the road, you're playing every night, and it's sweaty gigs. You know, I put those light strings on, it'll save your life. Mm-hmm. You know, I wish I could do that for the voice.
Well, we're gonna change the scenery here a little bit. We're gonna get the band up, and you guys are gonna get to ask Paul some questions.
All right.
So why don't we get Menno Verbaten and John Rugevich up to the stage?
Yeah.
All right.
We're gonna jam. Now, before we begin, I'm gonna warm up, and I'm gonna show you guys the most amazing technical, musical warm-up you can do as a guitar player. This might work for other instruments as well. You could probably pretty easily translate it. We could even do other versions of it. This warm-up I came up with by doing, I have an online rock guitar school, and from watching students that are trying to do fast picking, I've had to analyze, like, what do they need? What is the part that needs the most work? Why isn't this working? And from coming up with a million different answers, I developed this practice technique, and it's really easy to remember. It's easy to do, but it will absolutely warm up your not only your muscles, but it will, to me, it'll get the tone right, and the dynamics, and not just the speed, but it makes you sound good. And here's what it is: you play open strings muted. So it's not open, but it's muted. And as crazy as this sounds, all upstrokes. I mean, you can do it with downs as well, but most players, you know, it's sort of like if you're doing like a single stroke drum roll, you want your right hand to be as fast as your left. You want them to be equal, otherwise it gets lopsided, it's not going to sound good. And if you've got a Strat or any guitar that's got a volume knob here, you may want to actually, like, I mean, you got to deal with that because your hand can hit it when you're doing this thing. But you can always move it around. That's why I've got these knobs down here. So the trick is you do a shuffle. Shuffles do boop bop boop 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 bop boop 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 bop boop, and you just do that with the open string. Now it's all ups. Now again, if I'm doing if I was actually performing a song, I probably would play it, you know, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. But that's not going to work the muscles, and it's not going to build the upstroke as well. And actually, if you go on YouTube and watch Stevie Ray Vaughan do all ups, and you know, no messing with that guy. So all upstrokes, up, 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 for one bar, 4 beats. After that, change it to triplets. So go triplet, 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 triplet. And a shuffle is basically a triplet, with just the middle note taken out. So you're in the same groove, the same tempo. I'll slow it down first because I need to, because I'm not warmed up. So I'll go. Then the bar of triplets. Then the next string with a clean transition. All ups. Up, 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 up. If you can get your foot stomping too, that's good. Up, 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 up. And those transitions have to be really clean. I'm smiling, I'm starting to feel it. And you can do it clean or with distortion. Quiet or loud. And as you're doing it, listen to the tone. You want to get a nice scratchy sound on the wound strings, nice clear sound on the plain strings, and you want to just be in control. Oh, feel the burn. Don't worry, I'll be warmed up soon. All right, so that's much better. Yeah. You could do it with downstroke as well, but the ups is really the way to go, I think. So let me show you my left hand warm up now. Get my earplug out. So my left hand warm up is something that sort of breaks the rules a little bit of a rule that I had made for myself when I was a student here. Back then, I was really enamored with 3-note per string scales because of how fast they were. And you could play a major, you could really rip through those. And, but the thing that I started to discover is I didn't want that many notes. Now, not in terms of like how long the run is, but in terms of harmonically. A lot of times, harmonically, I like to have less notes. So, and I want to choose my favorites. You know, I want to go like, I really like this note. I want to include this one. This other note, it's not what I really want to emphasize. So, and for rock and roll, or for metal and pop, the minor, you know, the minor pentatonic is really common. But one of the sounds that I found is really useful and that I like a lot is a slight variation of that, where instead of the minor pentatonic has the fourth in it. That note's fine. There's a lot of fourths in music and they sound wonderful. But I found if I, instead of playing the fourth, I leave the fourth out, and instead play the ninth. So it becomes this. And that's a nice little melody. There's no sixth in there either, and that's really good. The sixth can get you into trouble. So just those 5 notes, the third, ninth, or the second, whatever you want to call it, the root, and the 7th and the 5th. Now, the guitar architecture of how to play that, you know, at least this fingering, is 3 notes on a string, and that's, you can rip through that. But the next one is 2 notes on a string. And that is sort of a wrench in the gears. You know, you get in the groove of doing your 3-note per string, and all of a sudden the 2-note comes, you know, that's not the same, but the notes are good. So it's worth it to get used to that wrench in the gears from a technical standpoint. So here's what I do, is I use a pull-off on each string. I think what I end up doing is like picking 2, and then doing a pull-off, and then picking 1, and doing a pull-off. and then you play it an octave lower, the same shape on the two middle strings, and then the octave again, and there's your whole long. Now, of course, in a real song, you probably wouldn't go up and down like that because that's a little predictable. So you start, working on ways to mess around with the notes. And that's just really gets that E minor 9 sound across really well. And it's, thank you. And it's very demanding of the left hand because I keep having to adapt between having different numbers of notes on the string. It's not, and I actually, the end result of that is so nice because a lot of times the 3 note per string ones, you can start to get into, you probably heard the term whittly whittly, it's where it comes from, is whittly 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 whittly. And there's some great whittly whittly in the world, but there's also a lot of lousy whittly whittly. And this one just, the whittly whittly all goes away because of the architecture of the lick. So that's what I used to warm up my left hand a lot because it's so demanding, and I'll just sort of keep that going. Or maybe I will do like the whole. There we go. So now I'm warmed up a little bit. Let me get that earplug back in and we'll rock. First song we're going to play, by the way, these Menno and John have been nice enough to learn these songs. We've never actually played them, which means they're going to be better because that's like the first take's always the best. So we're going to do Born to be Wild, a kind of crazy arrangement where I cut out the whole song and just go right to the solo. And I'll do a little bit of the beginning. You guys who heard this, right? And the trick with this is that the tempo is slower than you think it is, because it's sort of really tempting to push it forward. But the way I remember the tempo is I think of an Elvis Costello song that's called "Pump It Up," which is like, I don't know what key it's in, but it's like. Pump it up until you get the feeling. So that's the Elvis Costello tune, and as long as I remember that's the tempo. Then I've got it. So 1, 2, hold on, sorry, I gotta crank up. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, Born to be wild. Born to be wild. Solo. can't do that with backing tracks. It's just not the same. The next tune we're going to play, let's do, I'm going to do one that, I do a special stage technique that I invented in order to help my brain. And this is a Beatles song called While My Guitar Gently Weeps, and it's a challenging one because the solo, the chords are A minor, it's got a G in the bass, F sharp in the bass, then an F major, A minor again, G. And here's the tricky part, because the first time it goes D and then E. But the second time it's different. The second time it goes C and E. And that matters because the notes I'm going to play in my solo are influenced by what the chord is. And I always forget which one is going on because I'm in the middle of my solo. It's like, is it D or is it C? I can't remember. And so the way I remember is this is the D side of the stage. So whenever it goes, I wander over there. So that's the D side of the stage. As you may have guessed, this is the C side of the stage. Thank goodness there's only two different notes I gotta navigate. And so I sort of like, I do my Ozzy shuffle. So, and I play D over there, and then I play the C over here. And hopefully, occasionally I still forget, but it really helps. I get it 90% of the time, as long as I remember that. So I'm not going to do it so much during the singing part, but when the solo at the end comes, I'm going to do the wander. And I'm pretty sure that's going to keep me on the right chord. All right, so the other challenge is remembering the lyrics. It says he does all these rhymes. What is it? I don't even remember what I'm rhyming, but hopefully having listened to this song since I was a 6-year-old will help. I look at you all. I'm going to turn on the... there we go. So let's see, let me get my tempo right. I don't know how nobody told you. 1, 2, 3, 4, oh! I look at you all, see the love there that's sleeping, while my guitar gently weeps. I look at the floor and I see it needs sweeping, still my guitar gently weeps. I don't know how, nobody told you how to unfold your love. I don't know how someone controlled you. They bought and sold you. I look at you all and I notice it's turning, while my guitar gently weeps. I look at the lamp, we must surely be learning, still my guitar gently weeps. I don't know how you were diverted, you were perverted too. I don't know how down and looked at you. I look at you all, see the love that is sleeping, while my guitar gently weeps. I look at you all, still my guitar gently weeps. I want to give you one idea, which is I think that for guitar, maybe for vocals, definitely for vocals actually, and somewhat for bass. This is not a drum issue though. The drum doesn't have to worry about this, or piano players. I think everybody who plays guitar, bass, or as a singer should have a vibrato hero, and because vibrato isn't something that you can see. I mean, maybe if you look at a waveform long enough, you get something. But I think it's really something that is more for the ears and the feel of it. And so, no matter how much you stare at a written piece of music, it's not going to help your vibrato. The thing that helps is to have the sound that you want in your head. And my vibrato heroes are Brian May, Robin Trower, Eddie Van Halen, Mick Ralphs, Mick Ronson, Neil Schon, just about everybody in the 70s. I mean, that was really a good era for vibrato. Uli Roth, Yngwie has amazing vibrato. B.B. King, of course. And, but probably the biggest one is Robin Trower. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Robin Trower, but he's got an album called Bridge of Sighs, which is sort of his legendary record. And when I want to play better, I just imagine that Robin Trower is at the soundboard. And of course he never is, but I can imagine it still. And if I imagine that he's there, and I know he's, I think, he's listening, Robin's checking me out, then I've got to start bending the strings right. I've really got to, I got to make some guitar faces, and I got to be doing it right if he's there. So let me check my tuning, because Robin's in tune, so I might as well be as well. And we're going to do a Robin Trower tune. Another challenge to my lyric memory. Hopefully I'll do all right. The light is strong and the man is weak, and the world walks in between. This one, what key is it? It's an E. The light is strong and the man is weak, and the world walks in between. So rise above on the sea of love, see and let yourself be seen. All right. So here's a Robin Trower tune. I'm going to bend these strings like I've never bent them before once I get this earplug figured out. Robin also, a lot of times he's got that, some kind of pedal on, like a vibro something, that makes his guitar sort of go woo, 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 woo. And this pedal board that I got from the library, it's got something good on here. So. That's the Robin Trower sound there. All right, so 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. The light is strong and the man is weak, and the world walks in between. So rise above on a sea of love, see and let yourself be seen. See and let yourself be seen. Yeah, during the solo, I think it's the G-A. So I'll say like 1, 2, 3, 4. And then, yeah, it does the G-A every time. Right on the solo. 1, 2, 3. So raise your cup and fill it on up, but tomorrow never comes. You will the right answer to your God, and me, I'll be up and gone. I'll be up and long gone. The sea was glass and the land all gone, you can still be a friend to me. When my time has passed, is it too much to ask? A little bit of sympathy, oh, little bit of sympathy, little bit of sympathy, Lord. I'll get it right, don't worry. Thank you. So you got to find your vibrato hero. It doesn't have to be the same as mine, but whoever it is, either that or you're playing Ventures for your whole life. I'm not an expert on the Ventures, but whenever I think of the Ventures, I mean, they play as cool as you could possibly play without, I don't think they have vibrato. They're like, it's that kind of, like elbows that don't bend kind of music. But for that, it's incredibly cool. It's having a limitation sometimes can make things really interesting. But man, it's guitar. You can bend the string. Put some sevens on there. All right, so let's see. Towel. Okay, right now we're going to do an experiment that, this is the song with the chord that I don't know. And I'm going to say it's relatively quiet, so I'm going to do it without the earplugs. And this one was inspired by taking a look at my own guitar heroes and sort of figuring out who their heroes were. And of course, when I was a kid, my biggest hero was Eddie Van Halen. And he always talks about Clapton. And of course, I've heard some Clapton stuff that's fantastic, but I wanted to even go deeper. And I thought one of the people that probably inspired Eddie Van Halen a lot was his dad. His dad was a jazz clarinet player. And from the 70s rock era, and even 60s, a lot of the great rock musicians had parents that were also musicians. Paul McCartney's dad played piano. Pete Townsend from The Who, his dad was actually also a jazz clarinet player. So I started to get interested in jazz clarinet, not only because of that, but also just because sometimes if you hear like a really good jazz horn player and you hear them play blues, they can do stuff that, I mean, of course they can actually do some unbelievable shred, like arpeggios that you wouldn't believe, but also just their phrasing is so good and direct and stuff that a guitar player might not think of. And so I started listening, just going on YouTube and typing in jazz clarinet and see what came up. And I found this one solo by a jazz clarinet player named Paquito de Rivera. And he's kind of a legend. I mean, I'd never heard of him because I'm not a jazz expert. But after researching him, he's the cat. He's won all these Grammys, and he's from Cuba. And he's doing a solo together with a newer jazz clarinet player named Anat Cohen, who's a young woman who really plays great, and they do a solo together. And it's just ridiculously good. And it's really different than what I normally play, both dynamically, because a lot of it's quiet, and also harmonically, because he's playing notes. I didn't know where they were coming from, so I slowed some of it down. And he's playing a scale that really surprised me, because it was a scale that I learned at school, and I thought, I'll never use that. And he did one little tweak to it, and I'll show you what it is. He's playing, first of all, it's sort of a Pink Panther, the Pink Panther, that kind of thing. And when you hear that melody, it's basically taking a minor chord and sort of moving it. You're taking the main chord tones and maybe making them down chromatically or up chromatically, and it's just giving you this sort of like unstable feeling in a nice way, but you still know where your center is. And so this song does that a lot. The main part of the song is like, and that chord, that's the crazy one. I don't even know what that thing is, but I figured out some solos for it. And but the first part, the D minor, the Paquito de Rivera, he's playing a D melodic minor scale. Now, melodic minor, when you first learn it, you think like, oh, this is going to be great. It's going to be melodic. It's called melodic minor. That's one of the, the name is so attractive. But then you hear the thing and you're like, I don't know if I'm ever going to use that. But he uses it, and the thing that he does that's kind of cool is he adds the tritone. So, here's your normal melodic minor scale, which kind of fits in nice with that. But he also adds the tritone, which is like the blues, kind of the Batman note, so he adds like a, and it just adds a little bit of teeth to it. So I don't know what the name of that is, but it's just basically a melodic minor with a tritone. And I can't play it as well as him. I'm a beginner with this, but as we talked about earlier, I'm just throwing myself into the ocean and then seeing if I can swim. And the next part, the song only has 3 chords really, but each one of them is terrifying. The next one is this thing. What is this? It's like a, if you take like it's almost like a minor 7 flat 5, but it's different. Let me look at it this way. If you take if you take your D minor, like if your D minor melodic minor scale, or like and those top 3 notes, that's the really normal notes that everybody plays. And we're going to keep those the same, but the notes under it that kind of introduce it from melodic minor, those go down a half step. And that gives you that kind of sound. So. So I've already given you the 3 licks that I learned, so you'll hear those again. But hopefully I'll come up with some new stuff. And then the last chord is just an A7. Again, with that kind of chromatic falling down thing. And there I actually resort to my Yngwie licks and just play the kind of, what do you call that, Phrygian dominant. So wish me luck. I don't really know what I'm doing here, but I've played it enough where sometimes I get some good parts. And the cool thing about it is, and the challenge for the band, the challenge for you guys, is a dynamic challenge, because the notes are simple, but we're going to start quiet, and as we go, we're going to build it up, so the end is like big and huge. But we'll start super quiet and slow, and let's see what, I'll get the tempo for you in a second. It's always slower than I think it is. There we go. I think I'm in the pocket now. 1, 2, 3, 4. Like a slow motion karate chop. that's like the one I've been practicing. And practice must work, because I got a couple, if I do say myself, I got a couple things in there. All right. So there's my new scale. I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to use that anywhere but there, but I'll try. So Red House, now I'm glad you said woo. Because sometimes, you know, when people say like, oh, we're going to do this blues song that you've heard 5,000 times, it's like, oh, really? But, you know, so I really appreciate that you're not dreading this. I've been having so much fun trying to play the blues. Now, again, I'm from kind of a metal background from a finger memory point of view. You know, I grew up listening to the Beatles, but that's not what got on my fingers. You know, because I was, you know, as a guitar player, first I learned, you know, a lot of Zeppelin, you know, I was learning all the Jimmy Page stuff. Then I got into Van Halen, so that started to get kind of 3-note per stringy, you know. The kind of eruption, that kind of thing. And so the blues, you know, my dad had some blues records, so I kind of heard it there. But I really didn't have it under my fingers the right way. And I started listening to B.B. King, and again, doing this thing I was talking about where I just got angry at myself, and I'm trying to find, you know, like 2 good notes per chord. So just to explain what that was, it was like if you're going... Just trying to find 2 good notes that you're like, yeah, I can hang with those. And that's surprisingly, that can be really challenging. But this is Red House, straight ahead blues number. I'm going to do it in A because it's easy for me to sing there. And also I'm more familiar with A. You know, all the dots are in the right place when you play in A. And I'm going to show you one crazy guitar lick, which is, it's influenced by actually listening to my wife play jazz piano. And she didn't start as a jazz piano player. She's a classical piano player. But she was studying jazz, and she's really like methodical. You know, she does it very efficiently and follows the rules. And I don't do that very much. So it was good for me to listen to her practice because it trained my ears, because she's just playing these chords over and over, flashcards. And I started to realize, like, man, her jazz chords, they sound more sophisticated than mine. You know, because I was still playing, you know, if I see C major 7th, I play a C major 7th. But she was playing the one with the 9th in it, and there was some other element about it that was cooler. And what that element was she would leave the root out of the upper voicing, and play the 9th instead. And so I started doing that. I started trying to do that with solos a bit, because that's sort of the hip jazz thing to do. But it can work in blues and rock, where you know, if you're playing, for example, you get your 1 chord and you play right there. I played the 9th and the 7th, and very conspicuously did not play the root. And the same thing here, or sorry, those 2 notes are the 9th and the 7th, and you don't play the root. And of course, I mean, the root is fine. You can play it all the time, but to have control of it, and to go like, I'm not going to play it this time, it kind of creates a nice sound. It's a little jazzy thing. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you this lick, 4-note lick over the, well, you're going to do it anywhere, but I'm going to probably do it, I'll do it over the 1. So 1 chord's the A7. And the notes are, I'm going to do 3 notes on the B string. B, the 9th, 3rd, C sharp, and E. So it's a big stretch. No, 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 no. And then the low note is the 7th, the G. So there's no roots in there. I'm not playing an A. There's no A note at all. And I'm going to do an upstroke and a couple pull-offs, and then a downstroke on the last note. So up, pull off, down. Up, pull off, down. And if you want to really make it ferocious, you can pick the first note twice. Like. Now the beginning of Red House does this, and then it goes down a half step. You hear Johnny Winter doing that all the time, of course Hendrix, because he wrote this. And you can do the same thing with this lick, where you're going... You just drop it down a half step, and it kind of has that cool, like, guitar face blues feeling, but it's, you know, it's got that little jazz thing because it doesn't have the root in it. So, so here we go. I'm going to throw that in. When I do it, I'll look at you and you'll go like, oh, I know that lick. So here we go. Let's see. Get my tempo. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That's where my baby stays. There's a red house over yonder. That's where my baby stays. I ain't been back home to see her in 99 and 1/2 days. I said, wait a minute, something's wrong. That's key, you wanna lock the door. I said, wait a minute, something's wrong. This key wanna lock the door. I got a bad, bad feeling that my baby, she don't live here no more. That's all right, I still got my electrical guitar. Look out. There's a red house over yonder. Way yonder across the hill. There's a red house over yonder. Way yonder across the hill. And my baby don't love me no more. Well, I know her sister will. Thank you so much. Oh, that's so much fun. I used to be much more worried about, like, small little mistakes, and I don't know. I don't mind them with that kind of stuff. That's the nice thing about that style of music. It's loose enough where if you have a couple, big clams, it's like the average. As long as your average is good. I go back and I've watched like the old Led Zeppelin footage, and they make some of the most huge mistakes, huge train wrecks, and they don't care. And it's wonderful, just to see them like not care. And then, of course, they go on and play some of the most amazing stuff you've ever heard in your life. You're like, I can't believe that. And it's just, that's part of the style of music. I mean, if you're in Queensryche, you can't do that. You got to play really, there's a lot of music that's very structured, and that's a great thing about it. And actually, structured music is probably a lot more popular, and people like it. But as a performer, when you're sort of stretching out and trying stuff, man, it's a lot of fun to get together with some real human beings and just see what you can conjure out of the instrument. I'm having a good time, and thank you for letting me do such a thing. This is not something I planned on, but let's just try this real quick. One of my favorite things that Led Zeppelin ever did, it's this one little 2-second part of their live album, and the whole band, in theory, is trying to hit a chord together. The drums, the bass, the guitar, they're all just trying to go wonk, and it's the most awesome wonk I've ever heard in my life, because it's so, it's like, imagine a bunch of like heavy equipment, like dump trucks and a garbage truck and a crane, all kind of like falling out of the sky and hitting the ground, not quite at the same time. It's like, and it's just, that's what it sounds like. And what the thing, I just thought it's the heaviest thing in the world. And one day I went back and listened to it to see what exactly they're doing. And the drum part was the most interesting thing to me, because in my head, because I thought, oh, it's heavy, I thought that John Bonham was going to be like hitting a cymbal and catching it and hitting the bass drum, like, bonk. Because that's sort of the standard thing you do. You want to hit something heavy, bonk. That's not what he does, because that's just one thing. That doesn't simulate the heavy machinery. What he does, he plays 2 snares and a kick, da-ga-boom. So it's wider. It's not like some little knife edge accurate point. It's more like a dump truck falling out of the sky. Gotta go. And then, of course, the Jimmy Page and John Paul Jones, they kind of don't exactly hit together. So it's like 5 separate things, all just going like, and it's so huge. It's so much more interesting and powerful than everybody tight, super tight, together. So we're going to try it. So it's just 2 snares and a kick, da-ga-boom, and E, how you feel it. And they're answering, of course, Robert Plant is doing, I'm trying to remember what he's singing. It's in the middle of Whole Lotta Love, the breakdown. And what's he singing there? You got a boogie, I can't remember. Well, anyway, I know what it is. He sings Woman. He goes like, Woman! That was perfect. I was going to do it again just for fun, but they can't get better than that. So check out "A Whole Lot of Love," the live version on "The Song Remains the Same" record. When Robert Plant, you know, it's like 10 minutes in, and it's a really long version. He goes, "Woman," and it's the most awesome thing you'll ever hear. So that was a little bit of a tangent. Sorry about that. Let's do a Zeppelin song. Let's do this is a tune called "Lemon Song." I'm going to sing it an octave lower because I can't hit those Robert Plant notes. And what can I tell you about this one? The secret of this one, I remember seeing my uncle play this when I was a kid, and there's an open string that's going on during the riff. And it just gives it this sort of janky, you know, attitude-filled, loose kind of thing, which is really nice. So I'm going to put in my earplugs again because this one might get loud. And this is one, I don't think they rehearsed it either. There's a middle part where it gets fast and it comes back down, and it's crazy. So almost guaranteed we're going to have some train wrecks in this one, but like Zeppelin, we're not going to care. We're just going to look at each other and keep charging through. And Led Zeppelin stole this from someone, because the original song is called "Killing Floor." And I, as a music educator, I should know who wrote "Killing Floor," but you know, it's like Otis Rush or Willie Dixon, one of those guys, and Led Zeppelin stole it from them without giving them credit. But the Lemon Song's so awesome, maybe it's okay.
I should have quit you a long time ago. Oh, little baby, darling, 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 a long time ago. I'll be here with all my children down this killing floor. I should have listened, baby. I put you down. I should have listened, baby, now, darling, just on my second mind. Every time I go away and leave you, darling, give me the blues way down the line. Jimmy, my baby. Ooh, la, la, la. My. children down on this killing floor, 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 floor.
Oh, it was awesome. And that was free of clams. That was perfect. That was great. All right, so I think before we did this clinic, we had a contest for people to send in videos of playing one of my tunes, and they picked a winner. And first of all, I apologize that it was one of my tunes. I would say, like, some ZZ Top or something, but mine are all crazy. I'm hoping someday to write simpler stuff. I would be very satisfying to me. But it's sort of like inventing blue. Like all the primary colors are taken. People have already invented red and yellow and blue and green, and so the new music tends to have to be combinations of those. So it's hard to, somebody already wrote Louie Louie, and You Really Got Me, and these basic songs, and they're taken. So that's my excuse for writing stuff that's too complicated. But anyway, the winner today, he did an amazing job of playing Fuzz Universe, which is definitely one of my more complicated things. But I'm going to bring him up. We're going to play something a little simpler, so our fingers don't fall off. And let me make sure I get his name right. I believe it is Sung Hoon Wee. Sung Hoon Wee, are you here? If you're here, come on up. Yeah. There he is. And he flew all the way from Korea after winning the contest. That's stunning. Rock and roll. All right, so during sound check, we jammed together a little bit. Yeah, got some sound. We did a little jam session, and we tried to figure out just something that we could both have a good time with. And I decided to use the solo section of one of my tunes called Technical Difficulties, which is basically just a ripoff of the Pink Floyd song Comfortably Numb. And just so you know, I didn't realize I was ripping it off until afterwards, and it was too late. But that's kind of what it is. I'm not sure what key Comfortably Numb is in, but my tune, which stole it, is in E minor, a good guitar key. And I'm actually a little rusty on my straight minor because I've been playing so much blues stuff, and the third is really different. You play blues, the third, you kind of bend it towards major. But this one's more like straight minor, which I can fall back on my teenage fingering patterns because that's what I was doing when I was playing Iron Maiden and all that stuff. So this one, let me just introduce the chords to you. It's in E minor, a D major, same key center, the heavy metal C, and then quick B, A, G, and E minor. That's our part. So we're just going to trade back and forth. I don't know exactly how long we should go yet, so I'll give you hand signals when you should start and stop. I'll go first. That's all right. So let's see. Let's just play through the rhythm once, see if we get the groove. So 1, 2, 3, 4. was fantastic, but it's too short. We need to do one more. So let's have just a little guitar conversation, just you and me. The last jam we were going to do, and I've been doing this one a lot, is Back in Black. And the thing about Back in Black, it's well, first of all, I got to show you this thing. This is like a great mystery of music that I discovered. Now, the guy that was the producer on the Back in Black album was Mutt Lange. And what is Mutt Lange famous for? He's famous for everything being perfect. He's into details. There's no rough edges with Mutt Lange. You know, he knows every little tiny detail. But the thing is, with Back in Black, there is a mistake that happens every time the riff comes around. And I listened to the song for like 30 years and never noticed it until one day I'm like, hey, wait a minute. And I put it in my amazing slow downer in my computer, and I just got it to that one note, listened to it over and over again. I'm like, man, this is wrong every time. And the only thing I can think of is it either slipped past Mutt Lange's ears, which is impossible to believe, or they did it on purpose, which is kind of hip. And let me show you what it is, because it involves the bass guitar. Now the riff, you know that. So that last part, it's like a pedal tone thing, B is always on top, and then the other note changes. Now the first note it goes to is a G sharp. G sharp's the major third. The major third is happy. Now. My theory is that Malcolm Young was like, Mutt, that note's a little happy, isn't it? I don't like happy. This is AC/DC. We're not happy. Get that fucking note out of there. And then I have a feeling Mutt was like, well, have the bass play the G, which is what it does. The bass goes, and then, so it goes from A to, or G to A. Like, or, however you want to finger it, but that's it. So just try that real slow, because the slower it is, the more you hear how foul and cool it is. So if you just go like let's see, starts on 2, I guess, like 1. Yeah, now I'll play. I screwed it up. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. You hear that rub? It's just like, but it's awesome. So let's play that a couple times, and then we'll do the solo in E, and we'll just run it forever. But we'll do it wrong like they did it, because it's good. Once you get a taste for it, it's like an anchovy. You know, at first it's like, but after a while, you're like, man, put more anchovies on there. This is awesome. All right, so we'll just start right on that riff, and then I'll cue you when to come in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sang-hoon Wee, ladies and gentlemen, all the way from Korea. 감사합니다. Thank you, everybody, for being here, getting up early in the morning for some rock and roll. I'm trying to think of any last bit of advice I can give you other than it's your job to have a good time. And that's not always easy, but I think if you try, you can do it. All right, we're going to have a good time with this last one. This is a Jimi Hendrix song. Jimi wrote such good jam songs. And maybe that's another piece of thing I'll say is, like, growing up with metal in my fingers, I remember being fortunate enough to be interviewed, and when I started doing albums, and the question people would always say is, who would you dream of jamming with? And I'd have to say something polite, but in reality, well, first of all, I'd say I want to jam with Angus Young, Malcolm Young, Cliff Williams, and Bon Scott, and me on drums. That's the jam session I want, because that's the one drum gig I could probably do, and man, that'd be fun. But if it had to be guitar, really, I don't want to jam with anybody, because in metal, it's such a structured style of music, and the same thing with like maybe pop or classical. You don't jam. It's not meant for jamming. You compose the part. It's very worked out, and it's not meant to do like a long, extended whittly thing. And but other styles of music that I really wasn't that into at the time, like blues and jazz or rock that's influenced by those things, or fusion, those are much more friendly to long, extended jams. And Hendrix was a great composer of that kind of stuff. That's why people play his stuff so much. Is you get to the end of the song and you can just take it. It's not like a pop song that's 4 bars and you're done. So keep that in mind when jamming. It's not just what you play, but the style of music can really and just the song itself. Each song is its own little world, and some are great for jamming, some aren't. I wish that I was better at writing jam songs, because coming from growing up as a pop fan, my instinct is to not do it. To me, like a solo would be something like what would be that's it. That's the solo of A Hard Day's Night by the Beatles, which is arguably in my DNA the most awesome song ever written. Not a very long solo. Can't really, can't do much with it. It just because you want to get back to the vocal. But with the Hendrix song we're about to play, that is not the case. We don't want to get back to the vocal. We want to play some guitar. So this is Purple Haze by Jimi Hendrix. And let me get my tempo. One, two, 1, 2, 3. Seem the same, acting funny, but I don't know why. Excuse me while I kiss the sky. Purple haze all around. Don't know if I'm coming up or down. Am I happy or in misery? Whatever it is, that girl put a spell on me. Help me! Help me! Oh no! Ooh! Thank you, everybody. We'll see you again. Rock and roll!